Can you hear me play a song? Can you hear me sing along? Can you see all my slides, and does anything look wrong? Yes? No? All right, thumbs up, good. Okay, so welcome to the last talk of this session, my 10-minute intro to music theory. This is designed for people who know nothing about music and play no instruments. So if that's you, great, you're in the right spot. If you know more than that, hopefully you will enjoy this too. So why give this talk? Because I love music and I want you to love it too. And because too many people think music theory is only for musicians. So you don't need to be a musician to learn something about music. You just need to think about what you're hearing. My goal today is not teach you a bunch of information about music theory that you remember. It's just let you hear a few basic concepts and hopefully realize that you too can do this. So whether you want to, that's up to you. So the rest of this talk is going to be about illustrating a couple of theory concepts. Here's the two I'm going to talk about today, structure and mode. So structure is about where a piece goes and how it gets there. It's basically a song's plot line. And mode is about which notes are used to create the piece. It's the palette of colors to paint with. And it determines the emotional flavor of the piece. So structure, mode, and then unfortunately I have to define a little more vocabulary. I don't want to assume you know what I mean if I talk about these things. So a note is a single fundamental pitch. Here's a note. Here's another note. If you play multiple notes at the same time, you get a chord. You can have a 2-note chord like that one, or you can have a 3-note chord, or a lots of notes chord. Not all chords sound good. Finally, if you put a series of notes and chords together, you have a phrase. Here's a phrase. Yay, great. Okay, so back to the main content. Hopefully that's the limit of vocabulary for today. So recall that a piece's structure is basically its plot line. Where is the song going? What is it doing? Our illustrative example for structure is going to be the use of a couple of chords called the tonic and the dominant. And shockingly, if you do a Google image search for tonic dominant, you actually get results that are work safe and on topic for this talk, which surprised me. But anyway, the tonic is the name for the chord that feels like home. So it's where you start from, it's where you return to. Let me play the same example that I just played again. This time, I want you to listen to the first and the last chord. It's actually the same chord in both cases. It's the tonic chord. So when you hear it, you should feel like you're in a pleasant spot and you don't need to move. Nice. But it's a little hard to know what I mean when I say you don't need to move unless I give you something to compare it with. So this time I'm going to play a similar phrase and I'm going to play it twice, except once I'm going to end with the tonic and the other time I'm going to end it with a chord that will fit, but it won't feel as stable. It should feel like it still has somewhere to go, like maybe I wasn't done playing yet. And your job is going to be to figure out which time I played the tonic at the end by listening for which of these phrases feels more done. So here's number one. And here's number two. Now, which phrase felt more finished to you? The first phrase or the second phrase?
The second one.
Yay! All right, good.
Thank you.
This is the result I was hoping for. So feeling unfinished, like the first one did, can be okay. That gives us a reason to keep moving. And that brings us to the dominant chord, which is the chord most commonly placed in opposition to the tonic. So this is where you journey to before you return home. This can be a powerful chord, but it doesn't feel like a place you want to stick around forever. Whether it's short phrases or whole songs, composers can build up tension by moving away from the tonic to get to the dominant and then resolve that either slowly or abruptly by going back to the tonic. So here's a phrase that you might recognize that starts and ends on the tonic and it has a dominant in the middle. how do you know where the dominant is? Well, the easiest way is to find the place that would be the absolute most annoying spot to stop dead right there. The listener feels like this really wants to go somewhere and the tension needs to be resolved. So setting up tension and then resolving it is one of the main functions of most music, just like most books and most films. And that's a tiny bit about structure. Now, I also mentioned mode. Recall that mode, I said, is the palette of notes to pick from, so it sets the emotional context. Today, I'm going to compare the two most common modes, major and minor. And for the musicians out there, this is natural minor that I'm talking about. So this chart kind of overstates the case a bit, but to generalize, the major mode is generally for happiness, warmth, triumph. The minor mode handles the opposites of all those things. So here's some sample adjectives. And here they are in terms of Lego movie characters. So for songs with lyrics, it's very important to match your mode to your lyrical content. If your song is talking about darkness and no parents, then minor is probably a better fit than major, and that's because major sounds brighter and cheerier than minor. Let me give you an example of each. Here's a well-known phrase in major. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. And here's a well-known phrase in minor. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. Now, notice how it's not just the lyrics of these that are conveying emotion, it's also the chords themselves because they're in different modes. So one way you can get a feel for the effect that mode can have on a piece is to listen to the same piece in the other mode. And we're going to do an example of this, if I can do it. This is the hard part, so I'm nervous about it. But here's a piece that was popular enough to get a Weird Al parody, but I'm going to play it in the wrong mode. So can you recognize this? Any guesses? I wouldn't be able to get this. So let me try playing it in the correct mode and see if it sounds a little more familiar. So this is Gangsta's Paradise by Coolio. And if you read the lyrics to Gangsta's Paradise, you can just ask, okay, do these lyrics fit with major or minor? Let's see, we've got Valley of the Shadow of Death. My mama thinks my mind is gone. This is probably minor. And in fact, indeed, the song is in minor. So here's what it sounds like with lyrics. As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life and realize there's nothing left, because I've been laughing and laughing so long that even my mama thinks that my mind is gone. I can actually play it with the original bass line and stuff, but too risky for not marathon safe strats in speedrunning terms. What would this song sound like if we played it in major? As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life and realize there's nothing left, because I've been blasting and laughing so long that even my mama thinks that my mind is gone. Almost sang the Weird Al version. That doesn't work. That doesn't fit at all. It sounds bad. Don't do that. But some pieces have enough emotional crossover in them that they can work in either mode. So earlier I played a little bit of the Beatles' Let It Be without lyrics. Here it is as originally written with lyrics. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. This is in major, but here's how it sounds in minor, which makes sense because it's about trouble and darkness. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And now listen to the effect you get if I play the verse about the trouble and darkness in minor and then the chorus about calm and wisdom in major. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. It's almost as if the sun breaks through the clouds suddenly when we get to the chorus. Now, I'm not saying the Beatles should have written the song that way. I just want to illustrate the way that the choice of mode affects the mood of the piece. So that's plenty for today. Whether or not you can remember anything about structure and mode, hopefully I've at least gotten across that music communicates things and you don't have to be a musician or study for years in order to understand them. So always happy to talk about music. If you have burning questions, let me know. Thanks.